October episode of Women's Public Leadership Network's podcast series, Tips from the Trail, where we explore the path to political office from the decision to run to Election Day. I'm your host, Larissa Martinez, founder and president of WPLN, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization working to educate, organize, and inspire center-right women to seek public office at every level across the U.S. and be effective leaders. This month's episode is sponsored by Google. Joining us today is Michael Kaiser, an internationally known cybersecurity and privacy expert and the president and CEO of Defending Digital Campaigns, DDC. Michael's work prior to DDC includes the National Center for Victims of Crime in Washington, D.C., Safe Horizon in New York City, and the NCSA, the National Cybersecurity Alliance, where he led and grew efforts promoting a safer, more secure, and more trusted internet, including signature programs such as National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Well, Michael, we're so excited to have you with us today, especially given it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is a program that I believe you've led for a long time in your current position, but you've also had a really long history of kind of being in this space when it comes to focusing on data security and security kind of in general, especially when it comes to women feeling secure in their spaces. So I'd love for you to get into a little bit of how you got into this space. How did you get to your current position? What really prompted you to kind of seek this as your life's mission?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me in. Really appreciate it. Yes, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But that was a big part of my career for a decade. So, I have a few things to say about that. But, I think when I think back on my career, it actually parallels in some ways the rise of the internet. I worked in New York City at Safe Horizon, which is a large nonprofit social service organization. I've been a nonprofit guy my whole career. And that was an organization that works on victim services and victims' rights. And I worked a lot on issues around domestic violence, but other kinds of crimes as well, sexual assault, but also, burglary, robbery, homicide, all these things. We were a very large organization. We had offices all around the city, in the courthouses. We did all kinds of things. And we early on saw a couple of things going on in technology. We saw how technology was being used in crime. I mean, even in the early days, there were, kinds of software packages that people used to sort of surveil people. There were harassing websites that people were putting up, right? Those kinds of things. But we also saw the potential, right, for how technology could be helpful to people. And that was really something that was part of my early career that I was really interested in. And in fact, we put up our first website and people were like, oh, no victims of crime will ever, approach you during, on a website to ask for help. And I was like, how do we know? Like, no one knows the answer to that question because no one's really done it. And we did it. We put it up on a Friday and came in Monday. And the first email we had was from a domestic violence victim in upstate New York who was like, my husband's doing X, Y, and Z, and I don't know where to turn or how to get help. So that kind of opened my eyes, like to the potential of tech, but moved on from there into other engagements, like for the National Centers of Victims of Crime, and worked on issues around, the use of technology in stalking and domestic violence. And by then, it was much more widespread, of course, but people were struggling with what to do about it. And so this whole idea around safety and security in the use of technology was what was emerging then. Even then, like how could victims use technology securely when, in a domestic violence situation, their husband could see every single web search they were doing, right, and those kinds of things. Right.
Well, I think that everyone knows that technology can be both used as a tool, but also be used in not the best ways. And I feel like your experience and your history, I have no doubt, is incredibly interesting when you're talking about this parallel of the rise of the different sophistications that come along with technology today. And I think for today's program, I'd love to talk a little bit about campaigns specifically and women and what they face kind of on the campaign trail and what you're seeing in those spaces as reasons for them to really take this seriously.
Yeah, I think there's so many issues. I mean, my goal in life, and like when I worked at the National Cybersecurity Alliance and we were doing Cybersecurity Awareness Month, was always to try to make this as easy as possible for people. it's very easy for it to be overwhelming,
Yes.
For people to get confused. There's mixed advice out there in the world about what people are supposed to do.
I get overwhelmed. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Yes.
and that's crazy, right? Because there really, there are ways for people to do this in a more simplified fashion, and that's really our goal. In many cases, is to try and get this down to the level of facing the things that might happen to you as a candidate, as opposed to every possible thing that could happen to you, right? And that's really what the essence of cybersecurity is about: risk management.
Yeah.
And risk management is about identifying the things that might actually happen.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier about how some of these risks are things that people may not think about, right? When you think cyber security or privacy security, I think people think of, presidential campaigns, gubernatorial campaigns, people that are running at the highest levels, that they are the only ones that are susceptible to this. But what are you seeing at, either the local, state level, or even just people that work on campaigns? Like, what are some of the risks that you warn people about, that why they need to be paying attention to this?
Yeah, so we look at risk in two different buckets, right? We look at the bad actors who are out there who might be going after campaigns, and then we look at what they might be trying to do, right? So there's kind of two lenses into the risk discussion. So in terms of the bad actors, just as a regular consumer, right? Computer user, you're at home, you're shopping, you're banking, doing a little social, whatever you do, right? Your biggest risk is cyber criminals. Those are the biggest risk that most consumers face. In the political space, you face additional bad actors, which is what makes you at higher risk. So that's going to include the cyber criminals out there, and we've seen a lot of money stolen from campaigns using very traditional cyber, crime methods of, fake invoices, pay this now. We've seen gift card scams. We've seen all the regular stuff that you see in the world, right? On campaigns, right? Because American politics equals money, and the bad actors know that, right? That's pretty well known around the world. Even at a state ledge or even below that race, there's money involved in these campaigns, so that's where they go. But you're also going to face nation states and hacktivists. So let's talk about both those for a second. You might think you're running for down ballot in a race, maybe, state ledge, or maybe, mayoral race, maybe county executive, that kind of race. You might think, well, why would a nation state, why would Russia, Iran, why would they think about me as a potential target? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, just take the Chinese, for example. They just might be collecting intelligence, right? They just want to know. Yeah. Right now you're a mayor, but 2 years from now you could run for the U.S. House, right? Or you could become the governor or whatever, right? People go up through the ranks. So they're just collecting data on people. Maybe there's something going to be built in your community, a factory or something that a country might, from their country, they might be interested in. So there's just espionage and intelligence gathering goes on. Not everybody's trying to interfere in every election. Certainly that's true in some cases. We could talk about that a little bit. And the other is hacktivists. And hacktivists are people who are not necessarily aligned with a country. I think the most common would be think about Anonymous, right? Sort of this group of people. Maybe they're aligned around an issue. Maybe they're opposed to your candidacy just because they're on the other side. Maybe there's a policy they don't like that you are trying to enact. Or maybe they're just anti the whole system, right? And you're just part of the system. Yeah. So, and they're out there. So that trio of bad actors is what candidates face, unlike normal consumers. And then the goal of all these folks, the number one threat that everybody faces is trying to get into your account, right? Because once I'm in your account, I own you, right? Once I'm in your account, no longer is it just email, right? Your accounts are all connected. You have cloud accounts, right? You've got documents, you've got, spreadsheets, you've got presentations, you've got drafts of policy papers. You have, the IP of the campaign is sitting there, right, in the cloud and in your doc. So people are trying to get into that. So that's account compromises number one. And websites are highly targeted. We've seen a lot of attacks on websites, trying to bring them down at very critical moments in the campaign. Those are really the big threats that people face. And reminder, too, that people are the targets, right? So they go after people. I mean, they're going after the campaign, but they're going after people on the campaign.
Right. Right. And they also want data on your voters, on your donors. I mean, it's not just you as the candidate or your platform, but it's everybody else that's associated with you, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, campaigns are data-rich environments, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what they do is collect data on people to try and understand, well, will this person at 35 Elm Street vote for me?
Right.
Are they interested in the issues I'm interested in? If I'm going to knock on their door, what am I going to say to them? So, it's a data-rich environment, both of like personal identifying information about people, because you may have, I don't know, not every campaign has actually the credit card numbers if they're using a processing, but they do have information about people. They may have names, street addresses, they may have other things that are identifying about people. And they're trading that back and forth with vendors and themselves. So there's a lot of risk there.
Yeah. What are you seeing that's unique to women candidates? Are you seeing anything that is, something that women alone feel like they see are a higher level of hacking, or are they seeing, I guess, campaigns that are not necessarily as sophisticated on the digital defending side? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So we look, as I described, those, 3 levels of actors and some of these bad things that can happen. This to us tells, and not when I say us, I don't mean DDC here, I mean Google, Microsoft, Meta, all consider anybody in the political space on a campaign, working for an organization, family members of candidates, vendors, friends, staff, volunteers are considered high-risk computer users. And that's why this is such an important issue. In addition to just being high risk, there are other factors that can make people at higher risk. And I think sometimes, gender can be part of that. This is America. Hasn't always been, there has been some historical hostility towards certain groups of people coming into certain positions of power. And I think, you have to be aware of that. Does that mean automatically every woman is at a higher risk than anybody else? No. But you have to evaluate that based on your community, based on what you're trying to do, based on the historical norms of your community. And sometimes it could just be what you're doing. I mean, some people try to run for office against, well-loved people, right? And that could raise their risk whether they're a woman or not, right? So you just have to kind of analyze those factors about where your risk is.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, to your point about women, that because we don't see very many running at the level that we wish that they were running at, that, when they do put themselves forward, they tend to be higher profile, right? Like someone notices if a woman runs. Like it's another element that may put them out there more so than another guy running.
Yeah, and that's why cybersecurity is about risk management. You need to kind of evaluate like how you perceive the risk of your candidacy in your own community. Right. But
there are tools. There are tools to help. But before we do that, you brought up an acronym. So I wanted you to pause for a moment and just share a little bit about DDC.
Yeah. So DDC stands for Defending Digital Campaigns. We are a nonprofit organization. We are nonpartisan. I prefer to say we're non-aligned. We are, we have a sole mission of really securing this political campaign space and making sure that, candidates can do what they need to do, which is go out, talk to their public, tell the public what they're going to do if they get elected, how they're going to govern, what their policies are going to be. That is to me, that is the purest form of our democracy, right? Voting comes way down the line. It's a lot later in the process. The first process is being out there. So we were founded. We've only been around since 2020. It's been 5 years, but out of some work that had been done post 2016, I think everybody remembers a little bit about the DNC was hacked, and there were emails released and those kinds of things. Some people don't remember that way back in 2012, Mitt Romney's campaign was actually compromised by the Chinese. And we were founded actually, among other people, some tech executives, some former government executives, by former presidential campaign managers for Mitt Romney and Hillary Clinton, who were like, we got to do something about this, folks. And they went, they did some work at Harvard. We're not associated with them, but they realized that campaigns wouldn't pay for this stuff. Right, like you're not going to pay for security over, a radio ad or a mailer in your community.
You should, but a lot of them don't necessarily.
Well, they kind of felt actually that they shouldn't.
Oh, really?
Right? Because they felt like They felt like security, like if you were a candidate and there was like a physical threat against you and you called your local police, they wouldn't be like, oh, you have to pay for this.
No.
Right? Like,
I mean, sure. But I look at it more like it's a protection that you're doing for your voters, your constituent, for yourself. So I'm sure there's different levels that you would get, right? Like the police are going to be a little bit different than like private security that you're paying, right? Like,
no, that's true. But I think they thought that, and I think rightly so, that if you had to make a choice, right?
Yeah.
And if you had to make a choice, I think they would want you to make the choice, to gauge your campaign, right? So they went to the Federal Election Commission and said, like, what are we going to do about this? And they proposed that DDC be stood up and that we were able to take contributions of security products only from companies, give them to campaigns, federal campaigns, because that's the FEC's jurisdiction, right? So, presidential, House, Senate, but also state parties. We work a lot with state parties. Take those donations and not have to report them as contributions. So, some security products are quite expensive and they would exceed the normal limit of in-kind contribution anyway. So we can give them to there. And then we're also approved in Georgia, Virginia, Michigan, and Ohio to do the same. And we're working on trying to get more states where we can do that. It requires an exemption from the campaign finance law. Yeah. So in every state, we have to go in and ask. And we have to ask the regulator or the Secretary of State or the Attorney General of the state to write an opinion. Yeah. And that costs lawyer time.
Yes. And every state's different. Every state is different.
Welcome to America. Every state's different. So they all have a different process. And so, you got to work our way across this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so then what would you say are the essential tools that people need to have in their toolbox for dealing with these issues?
Yeah. So we define the core protections that every campaign should have as strong account protection, or like we like to say, strong authentication. And we can talk about some of these a little bit, specifically. Protecting your website from distributed denial of service attacks, which are commonly referred to as DDoS attacks, which are like flood the zone, take your website down. We've seen that. And then there's a couple of different ways to protect email, both inbound email and outbound email. So there are two issues around security in email. I think most people are familiar with the inbound phishing protection, right? But then there's also protecting your outbound emails from impersonation.
Wow. Okay. So are these tools pretty readily available? Can they find them on your website? Where do you go to get these tools?
Yeah, so you go to our website for sure, and we have a whole section on protecting campaigns. But what I would say to everybody, there are free tools to do every single one of those things, right? That you can do this for free, a lot of this for free. Obviously, we give away tools that are, higher level, maybe added protection, and we do other things besides those three areas. We have some stuff around social and some other areas. But those tools are available from Google, from Microsoft, and from other companies like Cloudflare. So we could go through some of those if you want.
Yeah, sure. I think it's helpful for folks to hear what to expect like when they're looking at the tools.
Okay. So starting with number one, strong authentication, which is the number one thing you must do. Everybody has to do this if they're on a campaign or not.
It drives me crazy, though. I'm not going to lie to you, Michael. You're like, for the love, I have to get a text message. But I know it's helpful. I know it's helpful.
Yeah. Well, what people don't understand is that there's various flavors of multi-factor authentication, right? And the text message thing actually is not secure.
I'm going to tell my team this, which we'll get into in a minute.
The thing that you want to do is you want to add what's known as a passkey to your account. And Google has passkeys. Microsoft has passkeys. A lot of sites have passkeys now. Those are digital credentials that reside on a device. So when I go onto my phone and then I face scan or fingerprint or put in a code, I'm in my phone. I go to get into an account. It looks for the passkey inside that device and lets me in. It's passwordless and it is unphishable. Wow. They can't be copied. They can't be stolen. They are, so it is the strongest form of authentication available, right? Not everybody has them yet.
And the least annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying, but the key thing, but the most important sites do. Right? PayPal has them. Things where you're doing financial transactions. These are really important. And you can link those to, for example, on Google's Advanced Protection Program. So Google's Advanced Protection Program is a product that Google created for high-risk users, like people on campaigns or journalists or other people who are at high risk, right? Which has a higher level of protection, the highest level of protection in there. Microsoft has Microsoft Account Guard. right? Which is something that they do, all this higher level protection. So that is the core, right? And you've got to use that high level of protection, highest level available.
Okay. But you can find those pretty readily by going to Google, Microsoft, your website. You can find.
Go to our website and click Protect Yourself.
Excellent.
And we will take you through all the tools that we have, that those companies have, and more, right?
Yeah.
Websites too. Google has Google's Project Shield, which is a DDoS protection for high risk and not just campaigns, but for any organization that might be a higher risk. You can apply for that. It's free. Cloudflare, which is the largest web security company in the world, has a free product for any website on the planet.
Wow.
That people can get. We have an upgraded Cloudflare for campaigns for people who are eligible, but that basic product that's free for everybody is very easy to turn on and get used. You can protect yourself.
Huh. Okay. Very cool. So then from a training perspective, how important is it for campaigns and candidates to take time to train their staff, train their volunteers? Or is it something that, to your point, it can be just everyone needs to go to this website, or everyone just needs to make sure they have a pass key? Does it actually require some active training? Yeah,
so training is a really great question, because it raises a lot of different visions in people's minds of what training is, right? What is training, And probably I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have lived through some, computer-based cybersecurity training at work and have been like, oh my gosh, this is just the worst. And I apologize for that. I'm not responsible for that. That can be pretty tough out there. So I think campaigns have an advantage here. So to circle back to Cybersecurity Awareness Month for a second, one of our main calls always was create a culture of cybersecurity in your organization. Well, I think campaigns actually have an advantage here. I mean, you have staff working for you, volunteers, you have people around you, your friends. You're running for office. They want you to win.
Yeah.
They want you to win. They believe in you. They believe in what you're trying to do for the community. And that's kind of easier to get a call for action. Like, we don't want an incident really to interrupt that. We don't want that to be what derails the campaign, right? So, and people running for office are leaders. So this is a leadership opportunity within your own team to do this. So that's part of it, right? And then creating not only training, but policies. This is how we do it here. We turn on passkeys for every account that we can, right? We do these kinds of things. We strengthen our, credentials everywhere we can. And on the training piece, I think this is something if you were in a big corporation, you'd have that computer-based training. Everybody would be dragged into to do this. I think it's just a matter that people understand what you expect of them and that that they're competent to do it. So whether that's bringing everybody in the conference room and doing it, or onboarding people when you onboard them just to make sure you're clear. Do you know how to add a passkey to your Google account? You don't? Okay, let us show you how to do that. And to make sure that they've got those things in place that you want them to do. And so it's really about competency and training, but there are a lot of different ways you can do it too. You can get everybody in the conference room. We do trainings for campaigns all the time. We do onboarding for campaigns.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, who comes in and does this? Because I think a lot of folks, to your point, are not necessarily opposed to grabbing everybody in and doing something, at the beginning of a campaign, midway through, whatever it may be. But who can they go to?
Yeah, well,
can they do that?
They can come to us, and you don't have to be eligible to get our help. We do some trainings. Actually, we do a lot of trainings with groups that train and recruit candidates, right? Because we'd love to get people early before they actually running for office to get them to do some security. But also, like I said, in that we have two kind of resources around this. One is, like I said, the Protect Yourself on our website, and we're putting more and more in there. We have how-to instructions for some of this stuff, like how to turn on some of these things, right? So, how to check if your website if your email has DMARC, which is the required authentication process to make sure your domain is not impersonated, those kinds of things. How to turn on, a passkey on Google, on Microsoft, and those kinds of things. And we're keep populating that. We also have a resource called defendcampaigns.org is our website. But defendcampaigns.org/resources is our knowledge base. And in there, we've tried to create kind of a help desk for the political sector. Sort of, again, full circle, when I was at NCSA doing the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, our audience was 300 million people, right? And that's like a pretty big audience. And we did a lot of finger wagging, right? Like, do this, just like I'm doing today, telling you what to do. Turn on MFA, turn on passkeys. But we didn't show people or tell people how to do it. And I felt that was a big deficit. And coming into this space, I wanted to kind of address that at this level. And that's what the help desk is about. It's contextualized to campaigns. It's written. It consolidates information. So like you don't just have to go and look at 10,000 links about how to turn on MFA on a certain site. It's like, no, here's how you do it on Facebook.
Okay.
Right?
And are your trainings virtual or in person?
We do mostly, we do a combination, but people can contact us. We love to do groups. I mean, we, even in places where, they might not be eligible. If someone came to us and it was we felt like it was a great audience, we would do it. I mean, it's not that much time to do a training for us. So, and I do them and I have an onboarding person. We do them with, we do a lot of demos for people. Like we show them how to do stuff. So we love to do training.
Okay. And then this is a question that just kind of came to me. Do you all do a certification? Like, can someone go to a candidate's website or see something that says like, this has been certified as having gone through either the training or has extra security measures in place?
We don't do that. And certifications are kind of risky, and we don't. I mean, this is a back and forth kind of discussion in all of cybersecurity. Do you tell people what you're doing to protect you? I'm not sure that like people are listening. Like all the time, like hey, Michael uses MFA on this account, but not that account. That kind of stuff. But we don't think it's our role to publicize what people are doing in security. We do track the campaigns that we work with directly, the eligible campaigns these states, kind of what they've done.
Yeah.
Like especially toward this core concept, because we're always trying to push people like, oh, well, your website's protected and you've protected your email, but you've got to do something about authentication. So we're trying to move people up the stack.
Okay.
And so we do a lot of data collection around that, but we do not share that.
Yeah, I was just curious.
No, it's a good question. And, people sometimes like to get those little badges.
Everybody loves a badge. So what are some mistakes that you've seen made when it comes to whether it be a staffer or a campaign, aside from not doing the training or not going through the authentication? Is there any other big mistakes that you see that people should avoid?
Yeah, I think, probably one thing, mistakes is a great word because not all cyber incidents are some, nefarious actor coming after you.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes like somebody attaches a spreadsheet to an email, autofills the email,
right,
and it's the wrong name, and out the door goes all this personal information about your donors because, you were supposed to be sending that to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So those mistakes are not uncommon. In fact, many major cyber incidents have been mistakes.
Okay.
And often cyber is a mistake, too, because someone didn't have the right authentication on an account, and that's a mistake when they should have had it. I think for campaigns, we all know, especially as they move toward the end, that they're frenetic, that there aren't enough hours in a day, that people are putting in, a great deal amount of time and are trying to get a million things done at once. And that's an environment ripe for compromise, right? That's an environment ripe for someone to come in and drop an email saying, hey, I'm a reporter for the, paper of record of the state, and I have a bunch of questions on you and that I've been investigating you and I have questions about you. Click on this link because I need to talk to you by the end of the day and make an appointment with me, right? Or I'm going to, so, you could see a staffer being like, oh my God, hair on fire. Right. Like, we're about to be like, and clicking on that, right? Or same thing with, we see that with the money piece a lot, right? Yeah. Like, oh yeah, pay this invoice. We're going to give you a 10% discount on your ad buy if you click it right now, right? So, and people are like, oh, okay, because there's, there may not be processes in place in the campaign to like address that kind of issue, right? Yeah. Like, who do I check? Like that this should be paid.
Well, and they're getting more sophisticated too, I feel. I actually had this issue with one of my emails where somebody sent me something from like Dropbox, but it was from someone in my contacts who the context around click on this was something we had been talking about. So, it didn't seem it didn't immediately flag. And so I think those are some of the things that people get nervous about too.
Well, the bad actors are very good at harvesting data, right? So we've seen this with some state parties where there's a lot of emails posted on the state party of people that may or county, party, and they take those and they use those then because they can figure out who the leadership is to try and scam the other folks. So I think that's, And I think AI, which, we probably could, talk a little about as well, plays a role here that, writing the emails, doing those kinds of things becomes easier with AI, especially for people who might not be, in the United States and English might not be their first language, right? Or tailoring it so it sounds like, an email that maybe comes from your vendor or maybe even your boss, right? Because there's public information out there.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought it AI because that is one of my questions for you. Just because obviously AI is something that we hear so much about right now, and the tools are kind of varied when it comes to their sophistication or their abilities. So what are you seeing kind of in terms of what is both a positive, a net gain when it comes to AI and some of the tools that they provide, but then also at the same time, some potential threats that you need to watch out for?
Yeah, so I think, 2024, everybody was all hyped about AI and not a lot happened. But a lot has changed since 2024, moving into the 2025 if people are doing municipals, which there was a lot. But then 2026, we obviously have midterms and big sweeping elections all across the country. And I am concerned. We've already seen like the Marco Rubio, fake, voicemails and texts that were sent to people. I just saw the other day that Amy Klobuchar's, Senate hearing, somebody took that and then changed everything she said to make it the opposite of what she would stand for. So we're going to see more of that. The generative AI, the quality of the generative AI, the availability of the tools is just getting better and better. I think the other thing that I'm concerned about with AI, and I just saw this the other day actually for the first time, was bad actors putting code into like attachments that has AI into it that like kicks off when someone opens it, that then, goes and can do more than it did in the past, to like scoop stuff up and export it out. So I think, AI is going to be out there. And I am a little worried about it. I think, I'm mostly worried about AI when it comes to the generative AI around not the big sweeping things, but the little things, right? The attempt to switch 47 votes in a precinct that will make the difference. I mean, it's one thing for something goes viral and then everybody's on top of it like, no, this isn't true. That's, and yeah, some people still believe it, but, in the end, it doesn't have the impact. It's like comes through the community listserv. It gets forwarded from an email that you think you recognize. It's like, did you see what Michael just said, in this community meeting, about this issue that's really important to our community, right? Like that's where I'm most fearful, actually.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is going to be a challenge because so many people today are ready to go to jump on anything, right? Yeah. They see something before they even have time to verify it or take a moment, take a beat. People are like, oh, I knew they thought this, or, I'm not surprised so-and-so thinks that, and immediately starts like to snowball that potential threat. So anyway, I think
it's hard to change people's mind.
Yeah.
Once they believe something, even if it isn't true.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's really, that's the human experience. It's not like, it's not only in this space. It's in life itself. So we have to be wary of that. But campaigns also, just a note for them. AI tools are very readily available now. So you need to understand if people in the campaign are actually using AI. We call it shadow IT use, right? Like, do you know if like somebody's been using AI to write your press releases for you when you told them to write a press release, right? Like there should be transparency there, right? Just so you know, because you should know, and also you might want to double check or triple check it. AI can sound good, but when you dig deeper, you're like, well, hey, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, this has been so informative. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we jump off, I did want to ask, do you have any recommendations on podcasts or blogs, newsletters, books, anything that you would recommend for our listeners to dig in a little bit deeper on?
Yeah, so we do a periodic blog, so I hope people would check that because we do contextualize it to the political space and try to translate risk and other things, and also about all the tools that are available. When it comes to blogs and podcasts, I mean there are a lot out there, but I think the best thing for people in this space, I mean, part of doing cybersecurity is keeping aware of what's happening, right? And I get my most valuable information just from my news alerts on cybersecurity, right? Because that's where the breaking stories are. And like I'm obviously looking at things like what the Russians are doing and other stuff, and people don't want to necessarily do all that. But having some alerts that come into you, around things like, how AI is being used or other things is really important. I think that to me, maybe I'm old school. I don't know. Maybe that, maybe that's the problem. But I think that's really been the most helpful for me. And then interpreting it, because like you have to understand the context of what's going on. I think a recent example was also that the federal court system got compromised. And my first thought was like, oh, well, this is great. Like, where do a lot of elections end up getting decided? Like, is that something we all need to be aware of now? Like come November, oh my gosh, can you trust the courts? I mean, so, it's that undermining of trust that, kind of worries me a lot.
Yeah. So given the fact that we are in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, what then would be kind of the top tools or the top actions that need to be taken while people are paying attention this month?
So my top recommendation always is take full advantage of the tools that are there for free. And so I'll just give you Google for an example. They have an amazing set of tools for any user that includes results about you, which is getting information about you taken down from search results, which for political candidates who are especially moving into this space could be really important. Like if your personal phone number is out there or your home address, or there's certain kinds of imagery they'll take down. They have a dark web monitoring tool for Gmail accounts that will look for where your information has been compromised on the internet. That is free, right? Microsoft has other tools similarly that will look at attempts to get into your account, that they're there, right? And you just have to turn them on or know that they're there and use them. So I'm all for free. I'm all for taking advantage. I think, one of the things that I've seen, having been doing cybersecurity since 2008, which was before I didn't even know what cybersecurity was when I took the job at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Basically, no one did. No one was thinking about it outside of the Beltway that much.
Little did you know.
Yeah, is how much better cybersecurity has gotten.
Yeah.
Right. The first Cybersecurity Awareness Month that was ever done, the advice was update your software when you change the batteries in your smoke alarm. Right. Like that's pretty old school, but that's what it was. Right. That's where we were, and now most of that stuff is automatic. Now, you can get alerted about a lot of different things. Now there are protections built in that are turned on or you can turn on that will protect you. And if you do all those things and protect the core services that you use, the core platforms that you use, that is a ton of security, right? That is always step one.
Okay. And you can find that on your website, which we will make sure we include for all of those that are listening in the information piece on this podcast. But I will also make a quick note that Google and Microsoft are both partners of ours, and that our in-person event, especially our national summit every year, they come in and help us do a little bit of a training to ensure that people know kind of what to do in person, because sometimes it can feel overwhelming, to your point earlier. Right? So.
They're partners of ours and as well. And I've worked with both those companies throughout like all my career in cybersecurity. And what I'll say is, and not only Microsoft and Google, because this applies to a lot of companies as well, security is fundamental for these big companies. I mean, the internet is the platform they run on, and they have an interest in that platform being secure, and they have an interest in the users of that platform to be more secure. And so it's not just, there is I've just been doing security for a long time. The security community is different than the rest of tech, right? And there is they see this shared commitment, right, to do this. It's not a competitive thing, right? It's not, because the security of the platform is the security of all of us. And that's really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today. We're so excited to get this out to our listeners, and we'll make sure that your information is there on our website so that people can follow up with you if needed. But thank you. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here today, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Michael, for taking the time to share these valuable insights with our audience. And thank you to Google for sponsoring this month's episode. WPLN is a national nonprofit working to educate, organize, and inspire center-right women to seek public office at every level across the U.S. and be effective leaders. Thank you for joining us for Tips from the Trail. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Your support helps us reach more aspiring women leaders. Happy trails!